and perseverance to ensure that South African writer and journalist Nakasa's mortal remains are returned to South Africa, as we've just seen, came to an end yesterday when they arrived in the country. Nakasa will be reburied in the Heroes Acre in Chesterville in KwaZulu-Natal, the province there. Next month, I believe the 13th of September will be the date of his reburial. To tell us more about Nakasa and that reburial process, we're joined now in studio by Mr. Sandile Memela, spokesperson for the Minister of Arts and Culture, Mr. Nadim Tetwa. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Thank you to you.
It's been a very long time coming. Mr. Nakasa died 49 years ago. We know that the apartheid government had something to do with the delay in having his remains returned to South Africa. But it's been 20 years of our democracy. What took so long for him to come back home?
I think it's been a very bureaucratic and complicated process. What we need not forget is that as soon as he died, which was a tragic event in itself, you know, the file of his circumstances was classified and there was no access to the information. And of course, the family could not be allowed the privilege to travel to the United States to visit the gravesite. And of course, there were efforts from not just government, but the family and the media fraternity and other cultural and media activists, but it bore no fruit until recently when government got involved, and it marked a turning point in that there was a breakthrough. And today we can proudly say that we are very happy to have this son of the soil amongst us.
And I know you're not the only one who's jubilant about that. The country at large celebrates. But remind us why it's so important. What significance is this occasion?
Well, the significance of the occasion lies in the fact that, firstly, it brings closure and healing to the family. 49 years ago when he died, they could not visit the gravesite, as I've said, and they never knew where he lay buried. And then secondly, Nakasa himself never chose to leave the country of his birth, but he did it as a gesture of defiance to show that, no, there were people who were not willing at whatever cost to live under the repressive and vicious and brutal apartheid regime. And of course, the significance, which is the third point, is that the government brought him over here because we are aware of the disconnect that happens between our history as we know it, and especially the new generation that is growing up. So we are telling our own story and the experiences of growing up and living in South Africa at that time. We are rehabilitating and celebrating South African heroes who, to a large extent, remained unknown because they were not part of our history books, they were not part of our day-to-day conversation. And of course, we are bringing him this particular year when we celebrate our 20th anniversary of democracy and freedom, something that he represented, something that he articulated and captured, not just through his writings, which were insightful and articulate and intelligent, but through his lived experience. Because much as there was apartheid, there were individuals like Nakasa who defied it and went on to live in previous whites-only suburbs. They interacted and engaged with whites and just carried on with their lives as if there was no apartheid. Just to show that they don't agree with the system itself.
It's a crucial lesson there, especially for the young people, lest we forget. But you spoke about his writings. He described himself as a native of nowhere, very, very prolific writer, a very brave journalist at that. Just perhaps bring to the fore some of the stories, remarkable stories that define his legacy.
Well, one story that was told by the minister, and of course this is captured in the World of Nakasa, is edited by Iso Patel, is that together with his friend and colleague, Louis Nkosi, hired a flat, of course, and placed an ad in the newspapers, you know, applying or asking for a white maid specifically to come and look after the material needs of these two black journalists. And of course, that maid should have been able to sleep over. You know, that actually illustrates how he undermined and mocked and, you know, took the mickey out of the apartheid state itself. And then, of course, one other well-told story is of him walking at night and being confronted with a white colleague by a police man who wanted to know why is he not with his people, because he was expected to be living and confined in the townships. And he shot back by asking the question, who exactly are my people? And of course, that cut deep and straight into the question of our South African identity, which is something that preoccupied him throughout his life. Very significant.
If I may give in to conspiracy theory, perhaps, on the causes of death, we know that he did struggle somewhat with depression, understandably so under the circumstances, but no conclusive evidence of a suicide. Does the Department of Arts and Culture have a particular stand with regards to that?
Not yet, not yet. We do not have a particular stand as far as that is concerned, but of course we are aware of the two theories that surround the circumstances of his death. What we know is that, of course, information and details on Nat Nakasa's death was classified by, I think, the American government, and the jury is still out as to what happened exactly, and that's how things stand.
Sandile, thank you so much for having joined us. Sandile Memela, the spokesperson for the Minister of Arts and Culture. And just a little bit off air, we spoke also about the legacy of the apartheid regime and a piece of history that's been left behind in the States as well. The grave site where Mr. Nat Nakasa lay for all these years will not be reused, and it will stand there as a reminder that our struggle went beyond South African shores. Well, let's leave it there. Thank you so much again for joining us. Morning Live continues.